Welcome to Burning the Ships, and I'm your host, Jason Seward, and today I've got my good buddy, Tim Bratz, on the show. Tim is a repeat guest. He was on here. I had to look back, but he was, I think, our third episode that when we got started. And back then, we didn't have many listeners. So now we've grown the following and the listeners. So I'm excited. I want to encourage everybody to go back and listen to that one if you haven't already, because in that one we got more into Tim's story and everything like that. Today we kind of got in, more mindset topics and things like that. But Tim is someone. So there's a lot of quote unquote influencers out there in the real estate space, or really in any space. There's a lot of folks that are selling a lot of promises, and a lot of them deliver, but most of them unfortunately don't. So it's a lot of room out there for folks to take advantage of people that have a desire to grow in whatever space it is. So about 3 years ago, Bill Phillips and I, my partner, we knew we were trying to scale up to the next level, whatever that looked like in real estate. We had bought a pile of single family homes, a lot of flips, a lot of rentals, and we had started getting into smaller multifamily. And we knew to get to the scale we wanted to, we had convinced ourselves that we needed an education, and we needed to be in a network of folks that were 2, 3, 4, 10 steps ahead of us, right? So Bill and I agreed that we wanted to research and find a mastermind group, like a national mastermind group, that we think would best fit us at the time. So I kind of was tasked with researching everything I could find out there. So I researched for about a week straight. And when I say research, I looked up every networking group tied to real estate that I could find, right? So these were from commercial real estate groups to just general real estate to there's a lot of niche groups out there. And all of them had similar themes, right? It was just a group of people led by a leadership team or, a couple leaders. And all of them had some kind of education. Most of them had some kind of education, coaching component, networking component. Most of them put on annual events, or a couple times a year they would put on at different locations. Most of them had some kind of virtual meeting component. So all of them were very similar in those aspects. So what I really started digging into is the leader of those groups. I wanted to see who was running this thing, what they were all about, what their values are, and stuff like that. So what I did is I landed on a handful of them, had a couple phone calls with some folks. Unfortunately, most of those phone calls turned into these ridiculous sales pitches where, they were trying to close me hard on joining their group, which was an immediate turnoff. But I landed on Tim Bratz. And what I did with Tim Bratz, he had a podcast. So first thing I did was literally go back to the beginning of his podcast, and in order, I kind of binged every episode. And I was doing it during my runs and my workouts and stuff like that. While I was driving, I was just binging these episodes for about a week. I also went into BiggerPockets and a couple different online forums to kind of search his name to see what I could find about him. So through the podcast, we're doing the same thing with our podcast. When you talk enough and you got enough hours, and at that point, Bratz had, hundreds of hours of him talking on a podcast with a bunch of different guests. At some point, if there's some holes in that fake face, if it's a fake face, you're going to find them. You cannot be for that many hours talking and talking with guests and about a bunch of different topics. At some point, your true self is going to be exposed. And if it's not, then what is there is your true self, right? So what I heard from Tim was someone that consistently talked about his family, consistently talked about his team, and those things come in first. He consistently talked about his investors, and come hell or high water, he was going to take care of his investors. These are all things that, it wasn't just fluff. He felt that to his core. He built a reputation around a brand that leaned into all these things. So I like that. The other thing, and this was a very specific thing we talked about in the interview that you'll hear in a little bit, but I went to a forum in BiggerPockets where someone was just absolutely bashing him. They had been to an event that he hosted, and they were bashing him about how salesy the event was. They were just trying to upsell him into the next thing and blah, blah, blah. And most folks would see that and defend themselves pretty aggressively, like, no, you were wrong, blah, blah, blah. Not Tim. Tim's response was he went line by line what this guy was bashing him about and addressed it. And he addressed it in a way like, you were right. We could have handled that differently. I apologize for that. We'll note that and we'll correct it moving forward and, at future events. This point was kind of right, but here's some context around why we did that or why we presented that or blah, blah, blah. And he went through line by line and addressed every point. Now, did that guy that was making those comments come back with a positive reaction? I have no idea. But what I saw was somebody that was willing to stare criticism in the face, address it, admit like, hey, you have some good points there and we'll take that back to our team. He didn't get defensive, he didn't get combative or anything like that. So that, combined with all the other things that I had researched, we decided that we were going to land on Legacy Family, which was run by Tim Bratz and his team. That was 3 years ago. Hindsight, I wish I would have done it 3 years sooner. It has had the biggest impact on myself and Bill Phillips from a business standpoint and a lot of personal standpoints, because we've made a lot of friendships and relationships through that group. But from a business standpoint, huge impact. And Tim Bratz, the leader of this, is to thank for that. He leads with value. He leads with a big heart. He has become not just a mentor through the group and not just a facilitator of a networking group, a mastermind that I have made so many good relationships with, but he's become a great friend. We both have young kids. His wife, Kate, my wife, Katie, we're all around the same age, and I'm excited to move forward in this real estate world, being his friend and being someone that our families can kind of grow old together in business and outside of business. And he brings all of the core values that I have. He shares them with me, and we've had great times together, both at events and at the bars after events, and we've broken a lot of bread together. We've brainstormed on business ideas, and I've invested in a handful of his deals, and same with us. He's a customer of ours at 608B Capital, and all of those things it makes me so excited to have found someone in a group like he puts on and bring that into my life. So with that, I have rambled enough about Tim Bratz. He needs no introduction. If you want to learn more about him, go check out his podcast, go check out his social media. He posts multiple times every day with everything they have going on. He's an open book. My good friend, Tim Bratz, welcome to Burning the Ships podcast. Tim Bratz, my man, welcome to Burning the Ships.
Dude, Jason, appreciate you having me, buddy. It's so I was, I think, one of your first guests on here a couple years ago, and it's awesome to see, and I knew that you guys would be, because you guys are this kind of person, is like, you guys are always consistent. You guys see things through, you make a commitment to something, and you dedicate time, you dedicate effort, and you guys see it through to the finish line. And a lot of people bail on the podcast because it's a lot of work, man. So seeing you guys still continuing to do this multiple years later just is a testament to your fortitude and your commitment to making an impact on people's lives, man. So I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, no, that's intentional. Like I know you have been very consistent with everything you do with social media, your podcast as well, for so many years. And like at the end of the day, I want the reputation, because, for business purposes and personal purposes, of being a consistent individual that's reliable, right? I show up. And so what better way to do that than platforms like this or social media or everything else that we're involved with, it's not try it out, move on to the next thing, try it out, move on to the next thing. We try to stay consistent. So I appreciate you recognizing that. But yeah, you were, I think, our fourth guest, maybe, back when we started. And on that episode, we spent 99% of it talking about your business, your legacy family, all that stuff. And this time I want to take it in a different direction. So I kind of want to spend a few minutes where I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself. And for those that don't know you and things like that, but we're going to peel the onion back on mindset today. And I want to talk all things resilience, family, friendships, relationships, balancing all of those things. And obviously a lot of that will tie into your business. But I'm excited to get into that because, I mean, hell, the last few years, they haven't been easy, right? For anybody in business.
Tough couple of years. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And
space.
The thing that, and I talk about it every time I come out to a summit or any type of event with you, y'all could be going through hell in business and you never show it. You show up with a smile, you bring that energy, you have that influence on people that no matter what you're going through, it's all good. It's all good. We're going to fight through it, make it through it. And that's contagious. It's motivated me. And I know a lot of other people that you've influenced over the years. So I kind of really want to get into the mindset of all that. But before we do, let's kick it off. I'm just going to turn it over to you and tell us who you are, however you want to go, whatever direction you want to go, but just what you got going on. And then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, man. Well, I think from a standpoint of, we're going to be talking a lot about mindset. Like, you guys can go and find me on social media and learn all about the business stuff that I talk about, right? But from like a fundamental, who am I personality wise, right? I'm a blue collar kid from Cleveland, Ohio. I was raised in the suburbs of Cleveland. My dad was a cop. My mom was a teacher. Grew up middle class and weren't rich, but had amazing parents. And one of four kids, right? I'm the third one, and so it was grow up, go to school, get good grades, get a good job, all that kind of stuff. And so went to college at Miami University, which is in Ohio, and graduated with a marketing degree and moved out to New York City, heard about real estate. And so I was going through college 03 to 07, moved out to New York when all the real estate was going gangbusters. And then the market collapsed, but because I was involved in real estate, I knew enough about it and I saw the prices, and I didn't really get beat up by it because I wasn't in long enough to get beat up by it by taking out these crazy loans and all that stuff. And so started investing in real estate, and I moved down to Charleston, South Carolina soon thereafter, just for a quality of life, and started buying very, very cheap houses with literally the first one was on my credit card. And then I had a buddy with 25 grand. And then I had another buddy with $100,000 line of credit on his house, and just stuff like that, where I was scrambling to just kind of put deals together. Deals were everywhere, but there was no money to be found. So I really learned how to get creative on the financing. I learned how to get creative on raising money, and then scaled that business and built up a residential or rental portfolio over the course of 2009. Started investing. By 2021, about almost 12 years later, had 4,800 doors, and it was very slow, right? If I showed you the curve, it's very flat, and then it goes like this in about 2018, 2019, where we picked up a lot of doors in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. And that hyperbolic curve ends up happening. And that's cool to say. It was not as cool to live through, right? Because we bought all these doors, and we were investing in heavy value add doors and things that needed turnover of unqualified tenants, things that needed a ton of renovation, a lot of work, a lot of carrying costs. And then we'd turn it around, refinance it, hold it, preferably long term, 5 years, 7 years, whatever. At least that was the idea. And then when COVID hit and everything from COVID happened, you're buying value add deals and you can't kick out tenants because unqualified tenants who weren't paying rent for a year and a half almost.
Right.
So now you're just carrying these properties. And then what you quoted or what you projected for labor costs skyrockets, projections on materials skyrockets, or you can't even find the materials. And then as soon as they lift the moratorium on evictions, dude, interest rates started going up into the right, like not even up into the right. It went straight up, and they went bananas. And then insurance started going crazy. And man, it was just like over and over. It was arrow after arrow after arrow in the business for the past several years. And it was a pretty tough market. And fortunately, I refinanced a lot of things when rates were low, but I still had a handful of bridge loans that I'm still working through. They're fixed rate, but they're still bridge loans and are 10% plus now because of where interest rates were. We were talking offline before this. The biggest one, $100 million deal, we just refinanced out of variable rate debt. That was my only one with variable rate debt. But dude, it was big enough to sink me, right? It was only one, but it was big enough to take out my legs on all of the other properties that I didn't have variable rate debt on. So, there's a lot of lessons learned in that. And I think when looking back, there were really two things that made the difference, that helped me get through just getting kicked in the crotch over and over and over again. One was community, right? It was community of people. It was having the tough conversations and people saying, hey man, let me help you out with this. Or have you thought about this? Let me make a connection over here. And going out and sitting in a room of achievers, of people who are progress oriented, people who aren't complaining. They're all solution driven. Man, made a big difference for me. Like, dude, get off stop whining, get over here. And number two would be do the work. And you get back to the basics. I think we all get driven by, I don't know, maybe it's ego, it's social media, it's, fear of not staying ahead and things like that. And so you think you got to keep on buying and keep on growing. And that's not always the case. And sometimes growth can come from reducing by addition by subtraction, right? And by taking things away in your business or your portfolio and like eliminating the headache type stuff. And that's what we've really started doing. I got focused on the revenue generating activities and started obsessing with the team of like, dude, this is all that matters. Revenue is going to solve all these problems if we can drive revenue. So we need to turn units. We need to lease those units. And as soon as it's stabilized, we got to refinance into long-term fixed rate debt that now time is on our side. Because dude, time does heal all wounds when it comes to rental real estate. Like you can just hold the property longer, watch rents grow, pay down principal, and eventually your head's back above water. And so that was always that's been the theme of the past few years, or on a handful of properties, right? And then I started thinking about, kind of going back to the addition by subtraction is like Jack Welch, the CEO, renowned CEO of General Electric, used to go into his company and trim the bottom 10% of performers every single year. And by doing that, you got the 1 out of 10s, the 2 out of 10s, the 3 out of 10s. He'd trim all the 1 out of 10s. And by getting rid of all the 1 out of 10s and backfilling it with new people, naturally you get a 3 out of 10. And somebody uses 6 out of 10. And there might be some 9s and 10s out of 10s that come in. And then you do it every single year. You just keep on trimming the bottom fat and watch everything elevate. Now it's all, these problem solvers, people who take ownership over their role and over their business. And so that's kind of the idea of what we did is we didn't go into necessarily the team, but we took our portfolio. We said, hey, here's all the properties. These bottom 10, 20, 30%, we gotta get rid of them. And so we've launched a lot of the smaller properties, a lot of the stuff that was like C-class, maybe it was problematic, but some of it was just too small or it was out of state. It was away because like we spread our wing, we went wide, which is not a good idea. Instead of going deep into a single market, I like going deep now. And so now we stick to really the Carolinas and Ohio, but I had stuff in 12 different states before. And guess what? When something goes sideways, you got to find a new management company 5 states away, or you got to fly your team out there, or you have to like learn who the court system there and figure out who the contractors. It's like every single state, every single market you move into is a new business. Yep. It takes this setup time and cost and mental energy in order to do that. And so, by standing back and saying, what do we really want? What's working? What's not working? What do we like doing? What do we not like doing? What's easy and what's hard? What's lucrative and what is bleeding us? we prioritize all of our properties. And so we focus back to where we are, and we've trimmed out. I'm down to about 2,800 doors today. And I'm trying to sell about another 1,000 right now.
Yeah.
Going back to the basics, man, getting back down to around 2,000 doors of badass doors, like just amazing rental units that kind of, rent themselves. Tenants want to rent them. Insurance companies want to insure them. Our staff wants to work at these properties because they're nicer properties and nicer areas with fixed rate debt, and we can hold on to forever.
Right. So I have a lot of questions with all that, but I'm going to go back to something you said early on about, ego at one point. So as you were building to nearly 5,000 doors, was there a period where ego drove that, the door count? Did that ever get in your way? And the reason I'm asking, because it's fresh on my mind, because I just read the book Ego is Enemy by Ryan Holiday, and I'm guilty of it too, where my ego becomes a priority and I lose sight of other things. Did you ever go through a period of that when building all this?
Yeah, I mean, dude, we played sports, right? We are very competitive people, and so if you and I are planking against each other, dude, ego is going to try to drive us. Neither of us are going to collapse,
right?
Because we both have too much ego, right? There's things like that where ego is good, because it drives us to push through viewpoints. And at the same time, dude, ego can be your enemy too. When you look on social media, like, guess what? I got a huge portfolio. I have multiple awesome businesses. And like, I get on social media and I see somebody buying a 15-unit apartment building. I was like, I need to be doing more, right? Like, there's this nervousness and this anxiety that I've had to battle over the course of the past few years of like, no, I don't, man. Like, less is more to me. I started watching the Minimalists on Netflix, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is what I want in my life, right?
Right.
Just nothing. I want everything. I'm thinking about selling my house and renting, right? Like, that's how extreme I'm trying. Like, I've gone in the other direction. But I think ego, it definitely drives us to do some really cool things. And at the same time, like, my life didn't get better as I got more doors. It only got worse, right? I had more headaches, more stress, more liability, more loans, more investors that I have conversations with, more mental energy that was going out the door, more problems, like all these other things. It's more of everything. It's more of the bad stuff, not just the good stuff. And the good stuff was kind of went by the wayside because you get spread so thin. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the ego definitely drives. And if you can kind of put that aside and say, hey, what really matters? What do I really care about here? And is this business serving me the way that I want it to serve me, as opposed to just trying to like be able to put stuff on social media but I will say, man, it's also, dude, somebody chirps in your ear, like, you guys are in the money game, right? Somebody chirps in your ear and says, I have money, take my money, take my money, take my money. You can only hear that so many times before you're like, all right, let me go and find another deal to put this into. Because otherwise they're going to go put it with somebody else who I've seen multiple times they get ripped off by, right? And so, like, there was almost this obligation to go and deploy and find more deals because I had so much access to capital during that time. And I think if I know people would have put money in other deals, probably would have lost money in those deals. In my deals, at least their money's saved, and I get them all their capital back. And guess what? It might be a delayed timeline or whatever. But I feel good about that. But I wish I would have said no a little bit more often.
Yeah. I one of the things I've shared this with you before. So when Bill and I were, when we met you and we joined Legacy Family, we were still in our corporate careers. So, I mean, that was our big hurdle, is to just try to connect the dots to figure out how we can walk from that and pursue this full time. You played a big role of that. Your group played a big role of that. But you mentioned community, and the community is what played the biggest and continues to play a big role for us. But you have your own community. You're the leader of it, Legacy Family. But I vividly remember you telling a story about, I think it was like New Year's Eve, and I think it was when you were looking to join Mark Evans' group, which Mark has a documentary getting ready to come out, and I think you're in it, so that'll be exciting. But walk us through that moment, because I don't know where you were on this journey or what year that was, but clearly that was a big step and a bold move you made. What was the mindset then, and what got you to pull the trigger, and then not like not just pull the trigger and dive in, but like really engage and then ultimately build something yourself.
Yeah, man. Well, I think, here's the thing. There's people listening to this podcast right now who know they're made for more, right? They know, dude, there's this level of, I know I'm going to achieve some awesome things. I would sit in the conferences and see people up on stage and be like, I'm going to be up on stage one day, right? I want people standing up and clapping for me when I come up on stage. And I was terrified of public speaking, when I was saying stuff like that. I was like, I just got to figure this out. And, uh, but I always had this vision of bigger things that I was meant for. And I remember, man, just going to like the real estate investors associations and stuff and talking to people and trying to network. That's what I knew as a networking type community. And I would go to there and there'd be like 95% of them were, no offense, but they were a bunch of dipshits, right? It was like the blind leading the blind. Nobody knew what they were doing. Nobody was like really making impact. Nobody was really like setting the pace on, in the real estate space. And I was like, there's gotta be, and there were a couple guys in the back of the room who were older than me, right? I was 20, I don't know, mid-late 20s at the time that I'm thinking about when I was going through that. And they were just kind of like arrogant and they just didn't want to talk to me and stuff like that. And so it was hard to break into the good old boy network. And at the same time, none of these other people were doing anything. And I didn't want to waste any time, running in circles. And so, I'm trying to scramble. I'm trying to figure things out. I start my own meetup group with local entrepreneurs and business owners. And I'd bring out experts to talk about marketing. And I talk about, accounting and talk about raising capital and talk about buying investments and talk about like all the different topics, right? Hiring a team. And I'd bring somebody out and let them talk. And then I would kind of be just the organizer. I would meet at coffee shops and nobody would pay anything. It would just buy their own coffee. And that was cool. But free ticket stuff, man, it gets a bunch of people who know, again, they're just bottom feeders, right? They're looking for free stuff, right? And
pay attention to what you pay for, right?
Yeah. And that's okay in some capacity based on where you are in life. And I was always doing stuff. I was always trying to make moves and trying to get deals done. So I came across a portfolio of 40 houses. Maybe it was 6. I think it was 41 houses. 41 houses. And it was like a bank-owned package in 2014. And a guy I knew had like $10,000 of earnest money up on this thing. And he and I were trying to move it. So I was marketing this portfolio. We were going to split some sort of like wholesale fees. I never made over $100,000 until 2014. I was 29 years old. And so I started wholesaling and stuff. And this would have been like a couple $100,000 that I could have made. I was like, oh my gosh. So I'm putting it on Craigslist when Craigslist was a big deal. And Mark Evans inquired on it. And we couldn't come to terms. He was too low on price. I was too high on price. I couldn't come down. He wouldn't come up. And so the conversation just never materialized. But he kept on asking me about what's going on with business. And this is like the first person at a high level who actually cared and showed, like, without getting anything from me, actually cared to have a conversation with me for like an hour as I'm walking back and forth in a parking lot of the bank before I take the cash in, because I went and picked it up with, on the 10th of the month, right? And getting paid in $10 bills and stuff. And I didn't have any systems or anything like that. And he's like, dude, you got to like plug into a network of people who know what the hell they're doing. And you should come out to this mastermind thing that I have going on and meet some guys who are just a little bit further ahead than you. And they'll share some insights and blah, blah, blah. My COO is going to be there. We flip 30 to 50 houses a month. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, I'm in Hawaii right now, then Bora Bora for another 6 weeks. And I was like, dude, this guy knows something. All right. So I couldn't make it out to the mastermind. It was $5,000 to go to a 2-day event in 2014. Right. So it was before inflationary dollars came in the past few years.
Right.
So it was a lot of money. And, time goes on. And what happened was that deal came to like, hey, we got a week left before my buddy's earnest money went hard. It was $10,000. He's like, I'm not willing to lose it. And I can't take this portfolio down myself. So I'm going to pull back from it if we don't have somebody in the next 7 days. So I called up Mark. I said, hey man, the deal changed. If you can put up $10,000 hard money, I'll split it. You don't have to pay us anything. and I'll split it with you, these different ways. And he goes, done. Where do I wire the money? And he wired the money without any paperwork, without knowing who the person was at the bank. He didn't have the purchase sale agreement. And I was like, this guy's either an absolute idiot, right? Or a Goliath of business.
Right.
And I can't figure it out yet. And so time goes on, and I start working with his COO and talking to him a little bit more. And he comes up. Actually, I hadn't met them yet, but we put some things in place to take down this portfolio because they have this buyer network that was buying turnkey houses. And we started doing and transacting these deals, and boom, moving deals. And he goes, hey man, I got another mastermind event coming up in February. It's $5,000. Would love for you to come out to it. It's in Las Vegas. You got to get there, get your own hotel room, and I'll take care of lunch and dinners while you're there. And it was New Year's Eve, and I hadn't done it, and I was like thinking about it. And New Year's Eve comes up, and I really, again, 2014 was the first year I ever made six figures, and I needed like deductions. And so that's what I used as my reasoning of like, all right, well, hey, at least I can deduct it this year. I won't have to pay, like I use pre-tax money to pay for this, but I still couldn't pull the trigger. He's like, dude, just PayPal me, just pay. And I can't do it. I can't do it. And I went over to my buddy's house. This is before I had kids. And I just started taking shots, and I was drinking beers and taking shots and mixed drinks. And I was like really drunk, man, like very drunk. And I was like, I gotta do this. And I sent him $5,000 because I couldn't do it with a steady consciousness. Right. And then once it was gone, I was like, it was like such a weight off my shoulders. And then I go out to this event a month and a half later, in middle of February, early February. And I see, and we sit in the room and we go around, and I got pages of notes, just page. And I'm like, this is what I needed, right? Being an entrepreneur is so lonely. Like you feel like you're on an island all the time. And then you find that there's an actual community out there like this, that this guy put together, and of other people that are just further ahead, or, maybe they have better health, but not a bigger business. Maybe they have more business, but I don't want to take relationship advice from them. Like there's different people. It's not one mentor that you have when you join a mastermind. It's many mentors, and you can pick and choose what you want from each of those individuals. And it was like, dude, my mind was blown. And I got some nuggets out of it of essentially I need to join a mastermind and do this every quarter. So that way, as I hit different hurdles, I can keep on punching through it. That was $30,000 at the time. And then they're like, you got to hire an assistant. That was going to be another $30,000 to $40,000 at the time. So I made like $130,000 a year before, and they just took half of my money, right? Spent half of my income, and I got a baby on the way, and all this stuff. And I'm like, but by making that commitment over the next 10 months from March 1st to December 31st of 2015, I made $400,000, and I tripled my already six-figure income because of those couple of things. I figured out how to build a team, figured out, that community actually existed, man. And it changed the trajectory on everything.
Dude. So, I mean, you're checking both boxes with that story, because number one, you joined the community, you bit the bullet, you took the risk, all those things, got uncomfortable, went to the event. You didn't make $400,000 by joining the community. You then did the work. So they inspired you and gave you some additional tools you needed to grow. So the two things you mentioned earlier, community and do the work, that's a great example of that. When you went to that event, you filled up your notebook, all kinds of ideas. Now things are rolling. When was it that you said, I want to start a community? I need to be, because I know that's where I've gotten to know you over the years well enough to know that ultimately, like, you want your legacy, which is the name of everything you do, to be adding value to other people and lifting people and all those things in every way you can. When did that start? Those wheels get to spinning? Was it day one?
Yeah, when you walk, there's a lot of ways that you can provide value to other people, right? Yeah. Like I had this free meetup group, and I was doing that, and I enjoyed doing that because I was able to help people with their businesses. Even though it wasn't necessarily me, I wasn't the expert. It was just I was bringing in other people, and it created the community and helped them out. And I got a lot of accolades for it, which was cool, and some private money out of it, which was awesome. But I've also always talked about doing deals on social media, just trying to like tell people, hey, you can go out and buy these properties, guys. And back then they were, $50,000 for a house that would rent for $800, $900 a month in a pretty decent area. Suburbs, first ring suburbs of Cleveland and stuff like that. And so I was always talking about it on social media in order to try to inspire my buddies who were in dead end corporate jobs. Right. And saying, hey man, like at least start doing this on the side. And what ended up happening over time was, I'm going to Mark's events, and then like kind of there was like some community in Cleveland, and really the pop was people would start hitting me up and saying, hey man, can I buy deals from you? Can I sell deals to you? Can I, invest with you? Or can I pay you to coach me? You hear that enough times and you're like, all right, well, maybe I should put an event together. And so I did like some small little events, come out and learn how to scale your flipping business, come out and learn how to scale your investment holdings and stuff like that. It was like $2,500 for a ticket. And I went through like the curriculum on how I did some of that stuff. And the beauty was, dude, I had a business, right? We were doing flipping 80 houses a month, and we had a management company that managed about 600, 700 doors for other people. So like I had enough, but I wasn't training people on how to go and get hundreds of doors, right? Because I'd never done that before. I was training them on how to go from flipping 4 houses a year to doing 4 houses a month, Right. And I think that's a big piece. Is like, you don't have to be this top of the apex, right? In order to teach other people. Like, you can help other people along the journey. Like, even anybody who's not as far along as you can help along the journey and make a big impact in their life. And so like that was big. But really, man, it was a constraint that happened. I wanted to go to the NBA finals, and I think it was the semifinals when LeBron James was playing. It was the year. See, they were. It must have been 2017. I think it was the year after they won. So they were playing the Celtics in the NBA semifinals, Eastern Conference semifinals, and I wanted a suite. And I was like, I want to go to this game and I want to get a suite. And I had like partial season tickets and just like regular seats. And the guy's like, hey man, if you ever want a suite, there's one left for the Eastern Conference Finals. And I was like, dude, really? How much is it? And he goes, $30,000. I was like $30,000 to go to a basketball game. But I realized it was for the entire series. So that was good. So it actually got me at least 2 games at home. And it came with 15 tickets. And I thought, dude, how do I turn a liability into an asset? Because I first thought, dude, who would pay $30,000 to go to a game, right? And if all the other ones are sold out, I guess there's a lot of people paying $30,000 to go to a basketball game. Yep. And I started going down this path of like, I wonder what these people do. I wonder if they're trying to monetize it. I wonder if it's a business write-off. And I started thinking about, how could I make it a business write-off? How could I monetize it? How could I turn this liability into an asset? And I thought, dude, if I could sell tickets to like a 1-day mastermind and then go to the game, I could sell 15 tickets for $2,000 a piece and pay for the entire suite. And then I could just invite my family, my friends to the other game and not charge them anything and be the friggin' man. Right. And so there comes the ego, right?
Yeah.
And so I made I think it was like 9 calls, and 7 out of 9 people said that they were in for $2,000 a ticket. And I was like, screw it, man. And I called up, and my credit card limit was like $35,000, $36,000 or something. And I called up the guy, gave him my credit card, maxed out my credit card. And I was like, I got to get to work on filling up these tickets and getting the money in. And dude, that was the first mastermind that I ever hosted. And from it, dude, I wholesaled a deal and made another $25,000 from it. And, I got Fatty Blumitri came out, who's my chief investment officer at the time, who was an attorney. He was my business attorney, who, by the way, dude, listen how cheap this guy was. He goes, I'm only coming if you guarantee my money. And if I don't make enough money, if I don't think it's worthwhile, I want my money back. I was like, all right, full refund guarantee if you don't think it's worthwhile. And so he comes out, he's so like blown away. He raises $700,000 the following month for a deal for me. Out of nowhere. He's never raised money before. And so now he's got this belief built. And then it turned into like, when's the next one? When's the next one? When's the next one? And we went down this path of creating these little pop-up masterminds packaged up with awesome experiential type things. And they became a big deal, man, locally in Cleveland, and then even regionally and international or nationally, people would come in to come to a 2-day mastermind that then plugged into an awesome experiential kind of event. And so
Yeah.
it was really, really cool the way it played out. But, it was creating this constraint and having to break through and figure something out, right? Like, you'll always live in this complacency of safety and like you never figure out what you can achieve. And so there's some risk in it, but the reality is it was pretty mitigated because I knew that I could sell the tickets.
Yeah. One of my favorite books is Everything is Figure Outable. And you're, of all the people in my network, I mean, you live that more than just about anybody I know. And what I mean by that is, man, like we alluded to it earlier, you did. The last 2 years have been tough, especially in your space, in the multifamily commercial real estate. You don't seem to sulk in problems very long. Like you see it for what it is. Okay, there it is. I have a new puzzle to solve, and you get right to work. You made this has been a couple years ago, but you made a reel, or your team made a reel of you kind of laying on a bench, talking about all the things going. And you just made light of like some real issues you were dealing with. But where does that come from? Like, did you see that as a model from your parents, or was it is this natural? Is this something learned? Because I try to be the same way, but you very rarely seem to get. Now, you may go home and vent to your wife or vent to your team, but forward facing, it's let's go straight forward ahead. This is what we're dealing with. Let's figure it out. So where's that come from?
No, I mean, my dad was always like, wait, pick up the phone and just make the call, right? Like, just get the thing done. Just schedule the appointment. Just like,
right.
He had a business. He was a cop, but he also had like a part-time business that, like a security business. And whenever I'd procrastinate on anything, he'd be like, what do you do? Like, just go and make the call. And I'd always push these things off. And it was always a bigger deal in my head than it actually was of, whatever. And he would always, just take action. And so I saw that a lot growing up. And I was a big procrastinator, man. I was a real big procrastinator growing up. I'd wait till the last minute, study for tests and turn things in all the time.
Same way.
And I realized just over time, dude, that's not very productive, right? It doesn't get anything done. And it just creates additional constraints and stress on me. Versus like having the constraint put on you versus you creating the constraint is of two very different things. And you feel more in control if you create the constraint as opposed to having it put on you. And I would say, I think just being in business long enough, you gain this wisdom of, dude, sulking isn't going to solve any problems, right? And I think there's an ego thing, again, that almost saved me too, because I have enough eyeballs on me where I couldn't hand back a bunch of properties, right?
Yeah.
That would have really hurt my reputation. I heard a quote once where it's like, dude, if you lose money, you lose nothing. If you lose health, you lose something. If you lose your reputation, you lose everything.
Yep.
And that has always sat with me. And I was like, I can't lose my reputation. I can't lose my investors' money, right? Because that's my reputation. I can't hand this deal back because it's going to screw up my credit, which is my livelihood, and more importantly, my team's livelihood, right? And it's going to hurt our reputation as, hey, this group is a group of people that hand properties back instead of doing what it takes to get the job done. And like we have the ultimate Cinderella story in that Houston, Texas deal that went from 30% occupancy, massive fraud by the management company, and horrible partners that didn't carry their weight and wouldn't help the situation, where we had to step in and recapitalize to the tune of $20 million. I've never raised that much money before. $20 million. And lenders, dude, breathing down my neck, not just the senior lender, but the mezz lender also. And we got to carry this debt. And we had brokers bringing us offers at $25 million for a property we were into for $75 million. Right. And we couldn't complain. When I moved two of my executives to the property, I went and raised money. I personally guaranteed that money on personal guaranteed notes, right? Because nobody's going to lend on a property that's $50 million underwater. And I brought in cash on my own personal reputation, and we started improving the property. We took over management. We did all the different things that are going to clean up the bad tenants, clean up the reputation. We start turning units. We start leasing those units. We found out there was a lot of demand for those units, and we just, put our head down and kept on sharing the positive momentum that we were doing. We ended up recapitalizing it all together, and turned it around and just got appraised for $100 million 2 months ago.
Fantastic.
And in less than 24 months, so we increased the value by $75 million because we focused on the revenue generating activities. We knew the value was there. It was just a circumstantial type situation that we needed to get through. And, but dude, it was a master's class on commercial real estate and taking a hard, difficult deal. And dude, it was arrows from every direction. We were fighting multiple front wars with the lender, with partners, right? With management, with tenants, with the city, with the police department, it was nonstop across the board. And, but dude, it's a testament to the team. And now the team feels like they could run through a brick wall. They can take down any deal. There's this level of confidence amongst them that they're like, are you kidding me? And it's nothing compared to that deal, right? Let's go knock this thing out. We just took over management on 300 units in Illinois that the management company was dropping the ball on. And we did it in the span of 3 days, taking over complete management. One of our property managers drove there overnight, handed out notices the next day. We were collecting rent April 1st, and we made the decision on, it was March 28th or something like that. And, that's the level of confidence and what it's helped the team do, though. So, man, I think it's just when your back's against the wall, you just got to do the activities. And I think the clarity around figuring out what those activities are for your business is critical, because really there's not that many. There's only a couple. And if you want to go and do more deals, there's one metric that gets you more deals. It's how many offers you make on a daily basis. If you want to go raise more money, there's one metric. It's how many people do you talk to on a daily basis about investing in your fund, in your deal, in your business. All right. If you want to build a good team, you just have to be prospecting every single day for amazing team members. And that's the key. It from almost everything I've seen, it usually boils down to prospecting for one thing: prospecting for deals, prospecting for money, prospecting for team members, prospecting for better operational efficiencies. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing those activities, you're not doing the business.
Yeah. You talked a lot when we were in Wyoming at the event about this mind. I think you heard it from someone else in a conversation, but you articulated it very well, the need. And you talked about it earlier too, revenue generating activities, but you related it to hunting rabbits. You got to kill more rabbits. And I'm telling you, man, I don't know if I've shared this with you, but that mindset and that event brought me back home with a completely different mindset. So we're in the middle of trying to grow this fund and get this thing up and going. And at that point, we were having some success, but we were spending a lot of time on, which was important, but operational type things, systems and processes. None of that even gets to be tested if I don't have the money coming in.
You're cooking rabbits, man. Too many people in the kitchen. Too many people cooking rabbits. There's nobody out there hunting.
Right. And so I came back with this just aggressive hunter's mentality. Like and we've got, Bill is a great operator. And I knew that if I just go out and blitz it and raise a bunch of capital, he'll figure it out. He'll figure out how to make loans with it and everything. And we have. And so that mindset, man, I think that can apply to anything in life, really, not just business, but go out, the number one thing that moves the needle, focus on that, and then figure it out from there. I want to shift gears a little bit, still about community, but one thing I've noticed as things have gotten difficult over the last couple of years, because I'm in your Legacy Family is the biggest networking group I'm in as far as like price point and size of it. But I'm in several others too that are just a lower price point. But over the last few years, I've seen a lot of people pull out of these groups and because things are difficult. And I want to get your opinion on it, because I feel like that's when you need to lean harder into these groups, right? Because talk to that. Like what have you seen over the last couple of years, other people's mindsets, like the people that stick to it, stick in the group, lean further in the community versus the people that say, I got to cut everything out and just figure it out when things get better. I know you've got opinions around that. So
yeah, I got a lot. Here's what I know. I've been in masterminds for 10 years now, and it's very eye-opening to see people who come and go. And usually, once you've been in masterminds for long enough and you've been networking long enough, you get a pretty good gut instinct about certain people. And people fall usually into one of two categories, which is transactional or relational, right? The transactional people are there to get in, take as much as they can. They just try to extract as much as they can. As soon as they think they've extracted 80, 90% of what they can extract, dude, they run. And I see people get burned because they do business with those people. Not all of them, right? But I would say the vast majority are bad case scenarios, right? The people who come in from a relational standpoint and they say, hey, I want to build the relationships. I've been around long enough, right? And you see this from the long-standing people in the group, usually the wisest people with the biggest businesses in the group. They're relational based. And they stick around and they don't usually do business with people in the first year that they're in the mastermind because of this whole transactional thing. And they want to see, does this person, are they in it for the relationships or are they in it for extraction? Are they in it for the long term or are they in it for the short term, right? Are they in it to give value, knowing value will be received also, or are they just try and pull value out? And that's why I talk about the 3-year principle so much, man. Like if you're going into something and you're not willing to commit 3 years to it, dude, just don't even start. Why even start? Because you don't make any real progress. The first year I was in Mark's mastermind, for instance, I was trying to just figure things out, get a lay of the land. Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? Who do I want to do? Like trying to figure stuff out and planting seeds. In the second year, now that I'm there, all of a sudden I got better operations, better systems. I'm asking higher level questions. Now I'm cultivating the seeds that I planted. And in year 3, somebody else sold their business. And because I was consistent and still in the mastermind, he said, hey man, I got a few $1,000,000. Can I deploy it with you? He put money with me, right? $2 million. We made a lot of money together. He also put about $1 million with another one of the guys who left after 2 or 3 years and then came back in. I think, he was in for a year or two, left, came back in. That's when this guy invested with him. And then the guy left again and he chased him down for money for 2 years, 3 years after that, right? Paying attention to this stuff, right? Who's jumping in, who's jumping out, who's committed, who's not committed. You see people in life, you see people in business who start a new business or they start a new career over and over and over again, and they never get ahead in what they're doing. The reason being they never get to that 10,000 hour, that expert status. And because they never made a commitment to anything, how can you ever expect somebody to make a commitment to you?
Yep.
Right? Why would anybody give their money to somebody who's never committed to anything more than 2 or 3 years in their entire life? Like, there's no chance. Like, the reason I have a lot of momentum, the reason I can raise $20 million today is because I've been in this same friggin' boring ass seat for the past 17 years of my life. And I haven't left, and people know I'm not going anywhere, right? And I've led with reputation, and I've always tried to do the right thing for anybody that I do business with. Dude, are there people out there who friggin' hate my guts? Yes. But in my defense, and you should hear their story too, because I'm a biased opinion, I've always tried to make decisions based on whatever's fair in the situation. And what they thought was fair is very different than what I think most other people would think would be fair. And because of that, there are definitely people out there who don't like me. And so I'd say most people, even if they don't like me, still respect me, right? Because that's how I try to operate in this capacity of what is the fairest way to structure a deal? What is the fairest way to unravel a deal? What is the fairest way to exit this? What is the fairest way to pay the investors? What's the fairest way to work with a partner? What's the fairest way to exit with an employee? Like what is that, all that, like if you lead with what's fair, what most other people would think would be fair, I think you make pretty good decisions. And then if you always make long-term decisions, dude, one of the things I live by is do not make permanent decisions based on temporary circumstances. Do not make long-term decisions based on short-term circumstances.
Yeah.
Right. And because that's when a lot of people make a lot of bad decisions. And it's easy to make a decision in the moment that you think, hey, listen, I just don't want to deal with this, man. Let me hand the property back. Hey, I don't want to deal with this. Let me just tell the investor we lost their money and too bad, too sad. They're an adult. Hey, listen, it's not like, no, that's because that investor, right, is never going to invest with you again. And they're going to tell 100 different other people. And like, dude, here's a interesting thing. We just had I was talking with Jed, who's my social media guy, and he posted something on social media the other day that did really, really well. Some things just fall flat on Instagram and some things go awesome. And I was like, dude, this did really well. We got a ton of comments on it, ton of likes on it. We got 50 plus shares on it. Like 200 people bookmarked this thing and like pretty amazing, dude. He goes, dude, look at all the different analytics on it. And I looked at it and there were about 300 likes and I don't know, 150 or 200, something like that, bookmarks. And there were 30 comments and there were, what was the other thing? Like 50 shares, right? And so when you look at all that stuff, you're like, oh man, it got 200 people like this. Guess how many eyeballs it got? 12,000. 12,000 people. Although they didn't interact, although they didn't say anything, although they didn't share it, 12,000 people, 11,700 other people still saw it. 11,700 people were still watching. 11,700 people probably scrolled through and just didn't say anything, right? That's 2% of the people actually interact. 98% are watching though, right? So what you know about and what you hear about people saying about you is probably 2% of it. There's probably 50 times the conversations going on out there about you, good or bad, or multiply by 50, right? That's what's happening out there. And so realizing we live in a society of voyeurism and just watching things without really interacting. And this can be used as a good and a bad, right? It's how important your reputation is and why you should dedicate you're not burning one person. You're burning a lot more than one bridge by burning one person. So understanding that, and, you know, based on how your podcast is doing or this post didn't get as many eyeballs as I thought, it really did. It's just not as many people liked it. Not as many people. Yeah. Like the people that have written me the biggest checks have never liked or commented on any of my posts, right?
Yeah, we had a great example of this, and we'll get to wrapping things up here in a little bit. But you know, we work with your company, Legacy Digital, with Q and her team, and you know, the social media has been difficult for us from the standpoint of I still just don't understand it, right? I don't understand the metrics. So we opted early on when we started this business to hire that out, right? Best decision we've made. And to your point, some of the stuff gets 0 likes. Some of it gets 0, engagement at all, but people are seeing it. And back in the fall, no, it might have been right the first of the year. It doesn't matter. I had 2 people in the same week reach out to me. One was a guy I've known for a long time, hadn't talked to him in a while, in his 70s, not on social media, reached out and said that his daughter had shown him some of our videos and he was interested in learning more about it. He invested $100,000 that week. That same week, another individual, same thing, not on social media, sent me a email to my Gmail account. Don't know how he got that. Like, that's a separate account, but saying, hey, my wife showed me y'all's website and a couple things. I'm interested. And he invested $50,000. So $150,000. And that's just one example, but 2 people, not on social media, but people are seeing it. And that is exactly the point. And going back to the consistency conversation we were having, when I say we, Q and her team post on our behalf daily, on a daily basis. I put this podcast out twice a week, every single week without fail. I don't care. I do care. I pay attention to the metrics, but I know that it's going to remain evergreen. Anybody can come back and see who I am and know everything. Like if I'm talking this much on a weekly basis for years, my true self is going to slip out even if I'm trying to hide it, right? Yeah. So that's there. And that's how we got comfortable with you. We were researching masterminds and just trying to figure out what our next step was going to be. I started listening to your podcast and I binged them, and I went on BiggerPockets and searched your names. And I don't know if I've shared this with you, but the one thing that kind of was the final straw on, okay, this is where we need to be, was somebody had made a horrible comment about you, about some event you ran, and that it was just a salesy type thing, and you were shoving stuff down their throat and all this. Well, you commented on that, and you didn't comment like in a combative way. You said, you're right, we probably could have handled this differently. I want to clear up a couple points that you made. Y'all went back and forth, and to me, number one, you didn't have to comment at all. Most people would have commented and trying to go right back at them, be combative. You were very professional. You owned that, hey, that's your perspective. I appreciate that. We'll do better with that next time. But here's kind of what behind the scenes was really going on there. And I respected that. And being active on that platform with your podcast, with all the posts you're doing every day for years, there's no hiding. Like, everybody knows who you are, and that's reputation, consistency, and all of that. So I could not agree with you more on everything you just said. So
yeah, man. Yeah, I think it's one of those things that if you are looking for a group to join, if you're looking for a community to kind of participate in, look at the leader. Look at how the leader obviously holds himself, carries himself, interacts, and different. Look at their reputation, realizing they're going to attract people like them. And you can also realizing some people are in and out, right? So if you look at the people who have been there for at least 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years or longer, and you can look at their character, you can look at their businesses and see if people have grown their businesses. Are they big businesses? There's a direct correlation in legacy family based on how long somebody's been in business and how long they've been in the mastermind and how big their business has grown, right? There's like a direct correlation on it. And it's because of a lot of the community and a lot of support and all those things. And so, judge me based on my social medias. People could fake that, but judge me based on people who are in my mastermind, especially people who've been there for 2 years or longer, who really know me. And if you judge me based on those, I'd gladly be judged based on Jason Seward. I'd gladly be judged based on Tim Bratz and Bill Phillips, right? Like, these are people who we have core values aligned with, right? And that comes out with the longer term members in any sort of community. And so I think that's a great way of looking at it. And yeah, man, it's one of those things to see everybody's business growing and everybody having success and being able to push through the difficult times. And when things do get hard, don't shy away, like lean into the pain. Like, the reason a big shift was made is because I was out of Mark Evans' group, and there were about 20 of us, and a guy worth $500 million was in the room. And he goes, yeah, hey, let's talk. Who's got an issue? And I was like, I have a big issue, right? And I never raise my hand in that group. Or very rarely do I. Usually I'm helping, co-host it with Mark. And I was like, this is the time, right? And what happens if I would have quit that mastermind? And by the way, Mark wrote me the first $1 million check to turn that property around. What happens if I would have quit the mastermind 3 years in, or 5 years in, or 7 years in, right? Or 8 years in, which is when he wrote me that check. What if I would have said, hey, I'm not going to renew this year? Guess what, man? I wouldn't have. And by the way, another guy in there wrote me a $2 million check. Another guy in there wrote me $1 million check. So at least $4 million came from that group alone.
Yeah.
Dude,
fantastic.
Who knows, right? And as all of our businesses grow, think about this. Where is Jason Seward's fund going to be in the next 5 years, right? Where's Tim Bratz's software going to be in the next 5 years? We're not going to be talking about doing, $100,000 or even $1 million deals. We're going to be talking about doing $100 million deals.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and if you just stay in the room with people who are moving and shaking and doing things, you will rise with them to whatever level you want to be at. And I think that's such a critical thing to understand is, you know, my buddy Mark, right? Mark had a good business and made several $1,000,000 a year. And then all of a sudden, a couple of things took off with his ERC stuff and a couple other businesses where he was making 8 figures, multiple 8 figures, right? Like crushing it. And what if I had burned that bridge 2 years before?
Right.
And I just not burned the bridge, but, didn't make the commitment and then jumped around. And guess what? Like guys like that, you got to pay to play to get their attention. And he and I are very, very good friends, but I'm part of his mastermind now just because we're such good friends and I'm supporting him, right? He pays his own way to come out to my events and support me the same way, right? And so, and we do so much business together that it's all throws into the same bucket anyways. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm still paying $30,000 a year to his mastermind.
Right. And I've talked about this a good bit on this podcast, but I'm with you sitting here. I will say it again because it's so true. We joined your mastermind. I had the mindset of it goes back to like you pay attention to what you pay for, right? Well, I'm writing a big check to be in this room. And I caught a lot of crap about that from people that just didn't believe in doing that. Oh, well, I leaned in, and here's what has come over the last 3 years since that. I didn't know what a debt fund was when I joined your group. Had no idea. I had borrowed hard money. Had no idea what it was. Now I connected. Kelly Garrett, one of my greatest mentors and friends now, has helped us build a mini rehab wallet that is scaling, pretty rapidly. Had I not joined that group or made that leap of faith, I would have never made that relationship and gone down that road. I met the Vincents, who helped us with all the legal stuff. Nick Burton, I consider him one of my better friends, and we have, a good accountability thing going on. We, Amanda Holbrook, Melanie Sikma, the list goes on, and I'm leaving people out, but all of the relationships, 90% of them that have helped us build to where we're at now and where we're going have come through making that one, in your case, New Year's Eve decision to join something and take the leap of faith. And now here we are rolling forward with it. But it came from, I'm going to go back to your 2 points, community first, but we took action and did the work within it and continue to do so. So, I love all that. I'm going to end on one topic. You can go wherever you want with this, but it's been, I talked to a lot of folks that, are in business, high-level entrepreneurs and whatnot. And one pretty common denominator I see is a very strong and supportive household, wife, spouse, kids, family, even friends. You create, you do 3 big summits a year, and the bulk of those somehow tie things that are not related to business directly into them almost every time. We go to Boston, we bring our kids to a mastermind event. We're getting ready to go to Napa. That's more of a spousal type thing where we're going to talk about relationships and partnerships and stuff. What does it mean to you? Your wife, Kate, your kids, how important is that for you to have that stability, love, all the support they give you to continue to keep you balanced in a lot of ways?
Yeah, man. I mean, this is one of those things that gets me a little bit emotional, but here's the dilemma in business is that we think every waking hour should be dedicated toward business. The reality is, and then we fake ourselves out. We believe our own bullshit that I'm doing this for my family, right? Does your family care if you make $200,000 a year or $800,000 a year? Do your kids give a shit if you made $10 million this year or $300,000 this year? They don't care. Dude, they don't know the difference anyway.
Right.
I have a very big problem with showing love and doing it through material possessions. I don't like it. I would rather get a letter or give a letter, right? Of like, here's how much I appreciate you. Here's how much I love you. Here's how much I care about you. Or doing some sort of activity and spending time with that person. I read in a book several years ago, and this has like been burned in my brain, is that the greatest indicator of your priorities is how you spend your time.
Yep.
Hey, family's number one. All right, well then go and do a time log of how you spent your time yesterday and today and tomorrow and the next day. And then go back and tell me how much time you spent on business, how much time you spent on your health, how much time you spent on your personal relationships, like your spouse and with your kids, how much time you spent on social media, how much time you spent, like, go and measure out where you're spending your time. And that's going to show. And then I want you to prioritize, because this isn't somebody else it's you prioritizing it unknowingly, of where do you spend the most time each day. That's your number one priority. That's your number two. And I think you're going to be grossly disappointed at how little time you spend with your spouse and your kids, even though you say you'd do it for them. And I got invited onto another podcast today. And the guy's like, hey, 4:00, let's do it. I was like, sorry, man, can't do 4:00. All right, how about 4:00 the next day? Can't do it. How about 5 p.m.? I'm open 4 to 8 p.m. Sorry, dude. I do not take calls. Occasionally I'll take calls, right? But I don't do podcasts. I don't have meetings or anything scheduled past 3:00 once the kids get home from school.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Same.
Very rarely, man, will I go and I'll, like, for somebody I absolutely love and care about, like a Kelly Garrett, I'll go and speak at her event one day a quarter or something in the evening. But like, I just don't do it. I'd rather hang out with my kids and my family and go and walk on the beach or walk the dog or take a golf cart ride around the island. And just like, dude, that's what I'm going to make as much money as humanly possible inside the time dedicated to economics. I think we should all make as much money as we possibly can inside the time you dedicate to business and to economics. Outside of that, you need to have very, very solid parameters. And I literally put my phone in the other room, because if it's right here, it's just too easy. And I'll look at it and then I go down a rabbit hole, man. And then your daughter starts yelling, Daddy, 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 look, Daddy, look, Daddy, look. And you're like, oh my God, she took 4 or 5 times to get me to take a look from my friggin' phone. And all they want is our attention, man. That's it.
That's it.
For me, and the other thing that I try to do is I'm starting to bring the spouses and the kids, not spouses. I only have one spouse, right? But I think it's important to start bringing them out to the events and letting the kids hang out with the other kids at the events, and interacting. And all of a sudden now they got friends with other buddies of mine who are entrepreneurs who I know value these relationships very, very heavily and are pouring the same positivity into their kids, letting them interact. And by the way, as your business grows, as my business grows, as other people's business grows, chances are we're going to start going on vacations together more often. We're going to start like hanging out the entire week instead of just a few of the days. We're going to be doing things like that where, hey, we could take the kids out of school. They still have the community, right? They still have the interaction with other kids in amazing locations all around the world by doing cool stuff, by staying together jointly, right? And maintaining the community ourselves, right? And so, I think it comes back to all those things, right? And making sure you're prioritizing your time. If you prioritize your time and you time block, and then just understand, hey, here's how much time I want to spend on business. Here's how much I want to spend on my health. Here's how much by having those clearly defined parameters and then focusing, having a constraint put on you, here's what I can do during this 3 hours of business time. I got to be hammering out phone calls. I got to be prospecting. It focuses you on the revenue generating activities. And an 8-hour day, you're really only spending 2 or 3 hours doing those things anyways, at best. And so now you just don't let the noise come in. And so you're way more focused. You're way more productive if you have your time prioritized.
Yeah. And real quick, I've got to point this out, but again, at one of your events, I was in Puerto Rico. Audrey, I cannot remember her last name. She spoke on time management, but she basically shared her calendar on the screen and showed how she every week fills the calendar up with all the important things, kids, personal, workouts, all those things that fills the calendar up, and then fills the gaps with business stuff. And up to that point, I did the exact opposite. I would plug in the holes with family stuff And that's complete opposite of what you just described. Since then, man, a couple things have happened. I'm not going to beat this to death because I've talked about it before, but I don't miss anything with my family. I mean, unless something urgent, like really needs my attention, very rarely, 99% of the time, if I can be around them, I'm going to be around them. We're going to be doing family stuff. But filling the gaps with business stuff has made me, I've never been more focused and productive during those little short blocks of time, because you made this point earlier, but I'm a procrastinator too. And I think it's because, like, I naturally know that I perform best with urgency when I know I've got to get something done. So if I condense that window down, and I've got a lot to do in that window, I'm going to knock it out of the park. And I'm a lot more productive that way. So my family's happier, my business is better off, and I'm a lot less stressed than I was doing it the other way. So that's just kind of regurgitating a lot of what you just said, but I think it's very important. Tim, I appreciate you, man. Like, you've been, I want to encourage folks that don't already follow you and everything you've got going on, because we didn't touch on any of your businesses, I mean, you've got so much opportunity there for investors. You've got opportunities for folks just starting off that need an education. You've got the legacy boardroom where they don't necessarily have to write the big check to be in the mastermind, but they can be on a daily call learning and educating themselves. You've got a bunch of stuff. So I want people to check you out. And if nothing else, just consume the free content, because there's plenty of it between the podcast and everything you have going on. You've been a big, big piece of everything we have going on. You've motivated the business, the activities we do, the consistency, the social media, the podcast, all of that is motivated by you and your group. And I don't want to blow your ego up anymore, but I'm very appreciative of it.
That's why I do. Like, I don't need to go out and coach, right? The reason I do it because I know it makes a big impact. And hearing that, man, it's just, it lights me up and fills me up and fills my cup to be able to go and do more of it. So really appreciate you saying that, man. And, it's like that. What do you do with your knowledge? What do you do with your time? Like, you can give it away to people for free, right? But it's like giving $1 away or $10 away to a homeless person. You don't know if they're going to go and use it to buy alcohol and drugs, or if they're going to use it to go buy a shaving kit and get a shower and go get a job. And unfortunately, you got to kind of like figure out a way to differentiate your time and figure out who's serious and who's not. And the easiest way to do that is the pay to play. And so, hey, it's X number of dollars. You can come out and meet my team, meet me, and do like that kind of stuff. And then we can differentiate. And then you start seeing the people who actually take it and run with it, like you guys have. And now it's like, all right, one-on-one time. Jason, what do you need? How can I support you? How can I be a resource for you? Who can I make a connection to? Like, it's more of a differentiating thing than anything else for me. Is who do I want to actually spend time with? Because I want to spend time with people who are rock stars, good human beings, great business people who are willing to just kind of to go to war with me. Like, all right, let's get in the trenches and let's go and do the work. And that's where the real growth and the real camaraderie comes out. So, man, super proud of you guys. You guys have made just unbelievable progress over the past few years, and super proud of y'all.
Well, thanks, man. Appreciate all your help and everything you're doing to continue to support us. And I'll see you a couple months in Napa. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome.
Yep. But I appreciate you joining us, man. And that'll wrap up another episode of Burning the Ships. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Burning the Ships. I want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, 608B Capital, helping real estate investors secure fast, reliable funding to fuel their boldest moves. If you're ready to take your investing to the next level, visit 608bcapital.com to learn more. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps us reach more people who are ready to burn the ships and commit fully to their goals. And don't forget to share the episode with someone who needs that extra push to take bold action. I'll leave you with this. Burning the ships isn't just about removing the option to retreat. It's about unlocking the courage to charge forward. No matter the odds, the past is behind you and the future is yours to conquer. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Burning the Ships.